Some days retirement sounds better than others, and at some point in the future, that time will come for you and you'll have to make some tough decisions. It's really not as easy as just turning in your retirement paperwork. There's a whole lot more to it than that. Will you be ready? We sure hope so.
It's time for the My Retirement Clarity Podcast with Lee Perkins, financial planner and president of J.L. Perkins Wealth Management. Get ready for a good dose of inspiration, simplicity, implementation, and of course, clarity on how to successfully prepare for retirement and grow and preserve your wealth. Here's Ben George with Lee Perkins.
Welcome into My Retirement Clarity. Glad to have you on the show. As always, I'm joined by Lee Perkins, owner and financial advisor at J.L. Perkins Wealth. And Lee, we got a good show. Am I ready for retirement? Everybody asks that question, right? And well, there's a lot of reasons people drag their feet towards retirement. And we'll go through some of those today.
Yeah, that's one of the most common questions that we are asked, of course, when a new person comes into the office. It's the main thing they want to know. Am I ready to retire? And usually what they're talking about is the numbers part of it. Is the money there? Can I do it? So yeah, it should be a fun show today because we're going to go over some of the things and some of the conversations that I talk about all the time when somebody comes in the office.
Yeah, both financial and emotional. Both those factors play into the decision to retire and when you actually are ready to retire. So we're going to take you through some of those discussions and kind of help you figure out, the reasons why people often say maybe they're not ready to retire and what kind of keeps them from being comfortable and confident in retirement. But Lee, we turned the page to September, my man, and you know what that means. College
yes,
football.
Sir. College football is right around the corner. What's Alabama going to do this year?
I don't know. Depends on who you listen to. There's a lot of people that have written them off already, but I think they still have plenty of talent to be right atop the West once again and play Georgia.
Always, anytime you've got a Nick Saban-led team, as a Georgia fan, you're always worried about him because he gets those guys in position to perform. He gets the most out of his players than anybody that I know. So, on the other side of the equation, as a Georgia fan, right now people are just sort of penciling us in as a national champion again, and that's a little bit scary because if the kids buy into that, buy into their own hype, maybe they don't work as hard. So. I don't know. I like our position, but we'll see. Yeah, the games aren't played on paper. They're played inside TV sets all over the country. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how it goes. Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. College football season usually sort of signifies the start of fall. It's supposed to start getting cooler, but man, it's hot as fire out there right now. So I know. Can't get here quick enough for me.
There's been a couple mornings. I know there's some big storms move through, and there's been a couple mornings we wake up and it's like in the 60s, and you kind of get that feeling once again. But then, man, it heats up pretty quick, and you forget all about it. But
sure does.
We're at the we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And looking
we're getting
forward
there
to it. So, looking forward to talking about that all the season, and hopefully we see another Alabama Georgia matchup. I know it would be a lot of fun for us fan bases.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, again, if you haven't joined us before, thanks for being a part of My Retirement Clarity. You can find everything online at myretirementclarity.com. But also remember, you can always schedule a meeting with Lee by going to talkwithlee.com. It's the easiest way to get on his calendar, find a time that works for you, and boom, you'll be on the books. Again, talkwithlee.com. So, again, for people that are getting close to this retirement age, Lee, I know you're talking with people all the time that come in that are nearing that big transition. I know that they ask you, hey, should I keep working or am I ready to retire? And there's a lot of different reasons for them to say yes or no towards that. So, for those people that they get to retirement age who say they're not ready to retire, let's start there. Do you find that this is because they actually do enjoy their job, which a lot of people do, or do you think it's because, hey, maybe they're not quite ready and they're not truly prepared to step away?
Yeah, I think it's different for different people. People react differently to their situations and circumstances. There are certainly people who keep working and put off retiring longer than most people would for reasons other than just mathematical or financial ones. There are people that just want to keep working because they want one more year of savings. And sometimes they would say, well, why would I? And I've had people tell me this pretty regularly. Why would I quit working now and give up the free company match every year? And this to me is a little bit short-sighted when you do the numbers and see how much money that actually is. And I think a lot of times these people know that they've got more than enough money saved. And so I think there's something else going on usually for these folks. For a lot of people, they don't want to retire and be at home with their spouse all day. It sounds kind of cruel to even think about that, but it's a real thing. And it's an adjustment for a lot of people. And you really have to make plans for this. I've discussed it on one of the shows in the past. Married couples have really got to have time to themselves once both are retired and both are at home together. So they also need to have their own space. I've shared the story about my parents and how they handled this when they first retired years and years ago. It was a challenge to start off with, but now they've got their habits and their separation patterns. My dad spends a lot of time out in his shop, and Mom spends most of her time inside the house. And of course, they see each other plenty, and they meet for meals. Or she'll come out and hang out in the shop a little bit, or he'll go inside. But there's a healthy separation there, and that's good. So yeah, it's not always just about the money. Sometimes there's other things going on.
Yeah, there are a lot of different factors there for sure. Emotional, psychological, just not feeling confident that you can step away. Are there any misconceptions maybe about retirement for people that might lead them to working a little bit longer than they actually need to?
Yeah, I think for some people, just the fear of the unknown becomes more than they can handle. For a lot of these people, their identity is in their career, and the thought of nobody needing them anymore from a work standpoint is not really something that they're ready to jump into. They go from having all these people that report to them to going home, and now they report to their spouse. So if they can just keep working a little bit longer, they will. And so they'll push retirement off, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. They just keep doing it. However, for a lot of people that do wind up, I guess, getting the courage or whatever to eventually pull the trigger and retire, they usually wind up finding their groove in retirement within 3 or 4 months. It might take them a little bit longer than most people. Most people, it doesn't take this long to get into sort of retirement patterns. But once they're in there, they're settled in, they develop new routines, and then they can really start to enjoy this next phase of life. And so, it's really, like I say, it's different for everybody, but you really have to sort of play out in your mind what retirement looks like for you, and don't make a rash decision.
Do you think people buy in too much or give too much credence to the idea of this retirement age? Like, we all just kind of have this idea that, okay, there's a retirement age that's set out there. This is when you step away from work. Like, I know it was more traditional for many, many years, less so now, but do you think that influences people when they make up their mind, either both to retire or to keep working?
Yeah, I still run into people that say, I'll ask them, when do you want to retire? And they'll say, well, I want to retire at 66 and 6 months. And when they tell me that, I know they are doing that simply because of Social Security, because depending on the year they were born, that might be when they're eligible to collect their full Social Security. But I would say, like you referenced, most of the time people now are wanting to retire a little bit earlier, maybe than they were 10 years ago, simply because I think retirement is more attractive nowadays than it was maybe when our parents retired 15, 20 years ago. Because back then, those people would retire and not really do a whole lot. Now, boy, the lifestyles that you see people have in retirement with some of these retirement communities and things like that becomes really appealing, and people can really start to visualize what the next phase of their life looks like. So, yeah, I think probably the traditional, I got to retire at 65 or got to retire at 67, because that's what people have always done. Less and less people are going by that rule.
Yeah, it just seems like there might be some people that just keep working when they don't have to, thinking, okay, I've got to get to this certain age. And, on the other side of that, people saying, okay, I got to be ready to retire now because I'm hitting this age, but I don't feel ready, but I need to be doing it right now. Like, it just kind of lingers over you.
Yeah, and I try to have conversations with people to sort of put, I guess, their longevity in perspective. Sure, you can work as long as you want, but do you want to give your company one more year? And you don't want to work too long and be, become unhealthy early and not enjoy retirement. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit later on the show. But yeah, just having that conversation and helping people paint the picture sometimes is very helpful for them. Hey folks, Lee Perkins here. If you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you know how much I hate taxes, and I know you probably do too. Our politicians are completely out of control. Their spending is off the chart, and you've got to be prepared for increasing taxes in the future. So we've written a book called Diffuse, 7 Steps to Protecting Your 401k or IRA from the Ticking Tax Time Bomb. You're going to want to grab a copy of this book and learn how you can protect yourself. Then you'll have to decide if you want to take action right now or if you'd rather wait until the IRS changes the rules of the game. Either way, the choice is yours. To get a free copy of the book, just text the word diffuse to 478-475-2050. That's DEFUSE to 478-475-2050. And we'll send you a free copy. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show.
All right, let's talk about then, Lee, people that are actually financially able to retire comfortably, like people that are in good shape, but for whatever reason, when you talk with them, they don't have that confidence to actually step away and retire. Where do you think that lack of confidence actually comes from? What's the root of that?
I don't know. It's tough for some people. I think it's really just the unknown. They've worked so long, they really don't know anything else. And so for these people, there's just a lot of uncertainty, and they can't in their minds make retirement make sense. We can tell them over and over that they're financially ready to retire. We can show them all the proof that they can possibly need with all the various planning tools that we use, but sometimes they still can't make that decision. It's so tough to see, and this might be because of past experiences. Maybe for sometimes these people heard stories of either their parents or their grandparents who lived through the Great Depression, and so they have all these doomsday scenarios in their mind, and it's tough to undo personal experiences and personal stories from people that you know and love that have maybe not had the greatest experiences. So that really makes people sometimes unconfident or lose confidence in their ability to retire the way that they want to.
I know we use this podcast to really help educate people, and you do it both for people that you work with, but also people that are just looking to learn more. But how important is financial education when it comes to this discussion to truly know and have a good grasp of what you're dealing with so that you do have that confidence?
Yeah, it's pretty critical. I think stories help a lot. I know a lot of my clients know each other, and so we've got a lot of clients who come to see us who've been referred by somebody else who may already be retired. And so when they can see how other people that they know have successfully made that transition, it certainly helps. And so we try to, just try to educate people as much as possible. I try to also share stories of people who maybe worked too long, people that could have retired earlier, but for some reason or not, they chose to continue working, and then maybe their health declined rapidly and didn't wind up having the retirement that they had planned on. And of course, we've all heard the story, and we know people who have retired and they died unexpectedly just a couple of months or years after they retired. And I don't share these stories to scare anybody or try to get them to retire before they're actually ready. But I just want to, again, put things in perspective and help them have the answer to questions that are keeping them from making those decisions. So, really, one of the things I will ask is, hey, do you really want to give your company another year? Because at this point, every year you give your company is one less year that you'll have on the back end to enjoy your retirement.
Mm-hmm. What do they usually say when you ask them that?
They kind of ponder a little bit, and and I will kind of use a visual. I will put my right fist kind of down on the table and just kind of bump it down right there as if it's a dot on a timeline and say, this is when you die. And then with my left hand, I'll kind of slide it back and forth, going towards that dot, that ending point. And I'll say, we don't know where you are in this journey. You could be really close, and I'll slide my left hand closer to the right hand to kind of visualize, give them a picture of how much time they could have left. Or I'll slide it back to the left and say, you could have more time, but every year. And when I say every year, I just kind of move my hand gradually towards that ending point. And that usually helps people.
Yeah, when you see that different perspective, I think kind of gives people maybe a pause when you phrase it like that. It definitely makes you think long and hard about whether or not you do want to continue to work if you don't truly enjoy that and love your company and what you do. So it's an interesting thought there. What about the other side of the coin then, Lee? People that want to retire as soon as possible come in and say, what do I need to do to get away from work right now? But you look at everything they have and how they position themselves, they're not really in a financial position to do it. So have you worked with people like that?
Yeah, this happens as well. And most of the times I just try to listen to these people and determine why they are so eager to retire right now, despite the numbers not really giving them the green light to go ahead and do so. And for some people, they just absolutely hate their jobs, and I get it. So for these people, I try to get them to sort of think through things a little bit before making a rash decision. If it's a toxic work environment that's dangerous for somebody to work in, and I'm not talking about physically dangerous, I'm just talking about psychologically or emotional. I get it. Go ahead and get out, pull the trigger and retire. But if you've just sort of grown tired of going in every day and doing the same thing over and over, and you're just kind of getting tired of the people that you work with, it might be best to just stick it out for a while. And so if this person chooses not to do that, then I just sort of talk through the logistics of possibly getting another job for a little while to boost up the numbers, to close the income gap. And so sometimes people do that. They say they'll do it, and sometimes people don't. And I've even had people tell me that they're okay. Yeah, I'm gonna quit this job. I'm gonna retire, and then I'm gonna go get a part-time job. And then they never do. And so they just have to deal with those consequences if the money is not really there.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not an easy conversation to have. What kind of adjustments typically, in general, are needed the most when you get in that position?
It's usually comes down, retirement is all about cash flow, income versus expenses. And most of the time it comes down, if we're late in the game and somebody's wanting to retire quickly and they, it's not like you can save $100,000 extra in the last year that you're working. Most of the times it comes down to reevaluating your expenses and trying to figure out, is there a way to trim some fat off of your expenses? And lots of times if you do the work, trim the fat, cut some things off, pat yourself on the back, and then go back and do it again, cut out some more things, then you might give yourself an open opportunity or a window of retirement that the numbers might get better in. So, yeah, that's usually what I try to tell folks to do. Really examine those expenses. Know where your money's going every month.
Well, I know you enjoy storytelling, and it's a big part of what you do to help kind of emphasize the point and get people a little more clarity on what we're talking about. Is there any story you'd want to share about this, whether it's somebody that wasn't ready to retire and had to make some adjustments to get to that point, or maybe they were financially ready and you were able to convince them, hey, it is okay to step away?
Yeah, so earlier this year, I met with a lady that was getting ready to retire. She's a widow, so when she came into the meeting for the first time, she brought her grown daughter in. And so within 5 minutes of this first meeting, it was completely clear that she was dead set on retiring at the end of May. So we got all her information, added it to the planning software just like we always do. And as I was looking at this and looking at the numbers and all the variables in her situation, to me, it was 100% clear this lady, she couldn't retire. It just wasn't possible. She didn't have enough money. She didn't have enough money saved to close the income gap that she needed. So I was really dreading that next meeting because I was going to have to give her the bad news. And like I said before, her heart was just dead set on retiring at the end of May, and I was going to have to sort of crush those dreams. But she needed the truth. So she and her daughter's about 40 years old, and she's sharp. They came back in, and I asked the lady to sort of restate her number one priority, and she told me again that she wanted to retire on May 31st. But then she dropped a bomb on me, and she said that since we last met, and it was only been like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks since we met the first time. Mm-hmm. She said she actually turned in her retirement application. Huh. And I was like, this ain't going to go too well. I didn't just rip the Band-Aid off and said, you can't retire. I did it the more painful way. I did it very slowly. So I began by just going into the cash flow section of our planning software And I showed her the gaping hole in her plan, and I just wanted her to see that. And I told her, I said, I can't see you retiring right now. So she really kind of teared up a little bit, but she didn't cry, but the disappointment was evident on her face, and I felt bad, but I'm not in the business to tell people what they want to hear. I have to give them the facts. So while I was talking to this lady, her daughter, she was kind of looking at the big TV that we have in the wall in the office. She was squinting at it. So I could tell something was up, and I asked her, I said, do you have any questions? And she asked me to click on the expenses link just so she could see those details again. And then she asked me where I got those monthly living expenses, and I said it came directly from the sheet that her mom gave me. And I handed that to her, and she glanced at it, and then looked at her mom, and she said, dude, and she called her mom dude. She said, dude, you didn't do this right. You listed your expenses at $1,800 more a month than they actually are. And she was right. The daughter was right. So the mood in the room just completely changed. And it was a great feeling. Certainly I breathed a sigh of relief. And so I guess the moral of the story on this is you got to make sure the numbers work before you pull the trigger. And that's something that we help people do in our office almost every day. So that story definitely had a happy ending, and she's been retired now for, I guess, 3 months. And she's, as she said, she's living the dream. That's what she says every time I ask her how she's doing.
Yeah, I love that. It just kind of just goes to show you how important it is to sit down and run through the numbers, as you mentioned, with somebody. You might discover great news like that, right? Where, you don't think you're ready to retire, you think you still got a ways to go, but all of a sudden you put in the numbers and, oh man, I can do this a lot earlier than I thought. It's a great feeling.
Yep. It is. And I'll tell you, that occasionally people do cry in the office, and I have more people cry in the office because they are happy that we've actually told them that it looks like they can retire. I've had more people cry for happiness than of somebody that's sad because the numbers don't pan out. So yes, that's a lot of fun. It's a great conversation to have.
Awesome. Well, if you want to sit down with Lee and have that conversation and try to figure out whether or not you're truly ready for retirement or what it's going to take to get there, talkwithlee.com is the website to schedule a meeting right now with Lee. You can also go to myretirementclarity.com to learn more about J.L. Perkins Wealth Management there in Macon, or to just get more of our podcasts and learn more about what Lee does every single day. Well, good stuff, Lee. I know this is always a fun conversation to have with people and an important one. But like you said, you got to be honest and upfront with people about it. And if you aren't ready, you'll help them get there. But the key is you got to have a conversation and start that planning.
You're 100% right. If you don't plan, what's the saying? Failing to plan is like planning to fail. So you want to make sure that you have the conversation to put plans in place today. We'll do it sooner rather than later, and you'll be glad you did.
Absolutely. Talkwithlee.com or give Lee a call, 478-254-3550. Lee, have a good week. Enjoy the football as it cranks back up. We'll talk again soon.
Take care. Lee Perkins here, and I want to thank you so much for tuning into the show today. If you like our podcast, we would be honored if you would share the show with others. And one great way to do that is by posting the show to your social media pages or by just telling others about it. Either way, we would really appreciate it. And of course, if you do enjoy the show, we would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star review. And this certainly helps other people like you find our show. And if you want to learn a little more about our firm and how we help people have the best retirement they can possibly have, go check us out at www.myretirementclarity.com. There are a lot of great resources that you can access directly on the website. And of course, if you want to have a conversation with me, you can visit www.talkwithlee.com, and this will take you directly to my calendar. And there you can schedule a 15-minute phone call so I can learn a little bit more about your situation. Of course, everybody is not a great fit for our firm, but if I think we can add value and put you in a better situation, I'll let you know, and we can certainly talk about the next steps. So thanks again for tuning into the show, and we'll catch you next time.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.